the Grouchy Nerd.
Alright, quiet down, knuckleheads. We've got a bit of time before Mutant Genesis hits the streets, and I've got a bit of a backlog, so it's time to look at an old hero pack for Fantasy Flight Games Marvel Champions. This time we're looking at Ms. Marvel. Sometime roughly 1,000,000 years ago, an ancient alien civilization known as the Kree somehow, and this is key, we're not going to think about how, somehow implanted some of their DNA into the DNA that would eventually evolve into humankind. So some small portion of the human species carries a dormant Kree gene, and again, I cannot stress this enough, we are not going to think about how. Exposing someone with some of these latent genes to something called Terrigen Mist will cause them to go through Terrigenesis. They'll grow a cocoon and sometime later emerge with superpowers and may or may not look like a crazy little monster. Kamala Khan got hit with the Terrigen Mist the first time. The first time! She defied her parents and snuck out. Isn't that always the way? When she became inhuman, Kamala gained various shape-shifting abilities, including the ability to make her whole self, or simply parts of herself, larger, smaller, or longer, or simply to change herself to look like a different person altogether. She also has a healing factor, though she cannot shape-shift and heal at the same time. She named herself after her favorite hero's former moniker, Ms. Marvel. Carol consented. And since then, she's been an Avenger and worked alongside Captain Marvel, quit the Avengers to form the Champions, and worked on an all-Inhuman team. So let's take a look at her. On her hero side, we have Ms. Marvel. She has the Champion and Inhuman traits, 10 hit points and a hand size of 5, and she has 1s all down her stats, which kinda sucks, but don't worry. She also has morphogenetics. As a response after you play an attack, thwart, or defense event, you may exhaust Ms. Marvel to return that event to your hand. So you can play a cheap event twice, or maybe you can pull the card back to help mitigate its own cost, or maybe you can get a good defensive event that you can just keep in your hand every turn. That's awesome. On her alter ego side, Kamala Khan gets a hand size of 6 and a recovery of 5, which is awesome. She drops the Champion trait but keeps the Inhuman one. As an action, you can discard cards from the top of her deck until you discard a Ms. Marvel specific card and add that card to your hand, limit once per round. As alter ego actions go, it's not my favorite. However, it is extremely useful. She does have a little bit of setup. She has this team of supports that she wants to get in play as fast as possible. So this does help that happen, but it is going to hurt to discard useful aspect cards. So let's see what she's got. First up is a 3-cost ally, Red Dagger, no alter ego, very mysterious. He's got the Champion trait. He attacks and thwarts for 2, and when he's defeated, you may spend 2 different resource types to deal 2 damage to an enemy and return him to your hand. Thematically, this is aces. He gets damaged, he does damage back, goes into your hand, and so you can play him again. That's great. I don't know if it's good math, I guess. You're getting 2 damage for 2 resources, but it's really just 1 resource because he's going to be coming back into your hand and helping to pay for some of that cost. So it's really 2 for 1, which is fine. That's about average, and in the right moment can be really key. Maybe get rid of a really obnoxious minion. Then we've got 3 copies of Big Hands. It's a 2-cost event with the attack and superpower traits. As a hero action, do 4 damage to an enemy. Yeah, that's nice and straightforward. 4 damage for 2 resources is not entirely unlike 2 damage for 1 resource, so it's not anything to really write home about, but it's not bad. Then we have 3 copies of another 2-cost event. This one is Sneak By. It has the skill and thwart traits. As a hero action, remove 3 threat from a scheme. So it's another one that's 2 cost for 3 threat, which is fine. It's about average for most aspect cards. Usually hero cards are a bit better than aspect cards on the sort of bang for buck scale. These aren't. So, what's that about? Because we're going to see. Then we've got 2 copies of Wiggle Room next, a 0-cost event, the best cost an event can be. As a hero interrupt, when you would take any amount of damage, prevent up to 3 of that damage, and draw a card. So she only has 1 defense, and her hero ability, that bouncing the card back, does make her exhaust, so you're probably not going to be using your basic defend very often. So this is great. It just blanks out 3 damage entirely, and you can still use morphogenetics to get it back into hand and potentially just keep it in your hand every turn. Then we have Amir Khan, a 1-cost support with the Persona trait. As an alter ego action, you may exhaust Amir to take a card from your discard pile and put it at the bottom of your deck, then draw 1 card. This does certainly help to ease the burden of using that Teen Spirit ability, which burns through your cards until you find a Ms. Marvel card. You can now take a key card that you had to discard and put it at the bottom of your deck. That way, not only do you know that you are definitely going to see it, you also know when you're going to see it. Then we have Bruno Corelli, another 1-cost support. As an alter ego action, you may exhaust Bruno to attach a card from your hand face down. Or as an anytime action, you may take up to 3 cards that are attached to him. What a great way to store cards you can't necessarily use that turn or that you want to see later in the game, and then when you're in hero mode you can pick up 3 of them and just have a monster turn. That's awesome. Then Nakia Bahadir rounds out our 1-cost supports. As an alter ego action, exhaust Nakia to reduce the cost of the next card you play this phase by 1. So unlike, say, Peter Parker's alter ego ability, which generates a resource that you have to use right then, this is just going to discount the very next card you play. So you could trigger it in alter ego, then flip to hero, and play a card at a discount. That's great. So now if we've taken full advantage of Bruno and put a card on him at the end of 1 turn and then drawn our 6 cards and then pulled that card off of him and then used Amir to draw a card, we're going to go into our hero form with 8 cards in hand and a discount on the first one you play off of Nakia. Dipping down to alter ego can be very tricky in certain scenarios, but Ms. Marvel really wants to, and she makes it very worth doing. When you flip back up into hero mode, you're going to have just a full, beefy hand of cards that you can do all kinds of stuff with. Then we've got 1 copy of a 1-cost upgrade, Biokinetic Polymer Suit. As a hero, exhaust it to generate a wild for an event. That's a solid economy card. We've seen plenty of events that get better or can only be played if you've played a specific resource in order to pay for them. So this is going to have any resource on hand at any given time for one of those events. That's great. Embiggen is a 2-cost upgrade. As a hero event, when you play an attack event, exhaust Embiggen and increase the damage done by that event by 2. So that big hands we took a look at that was 2 damage for 4 resources and was is now 2 damage for 6 resources and is hey. And Shrink, a 2-cost upgrade. When you play a thwart event, exhaust Shrink to increase the thwart by 2. Remember? So yeah, Sneak By now becomes 2 resources for 5 threat. That feels a lot safer to dip down to alter ego, which you're going to want to do kind of constantly. The bad stuff. Ms. Marvel's obligation is Home by Dawn. Exhaust as Kamala to get it out of the game, but if you can't do that, you're going to have to discard one of your supports, and if you can't do that, it gains Surge and only gets discarded. Fairly standard obligation here. Exhaust your alter ego to get rid of it, or do something fairly devastating to only discard it. Of course, Teen Spirit does help you find those supports if you have had to discard them, and they do only cost 1 to get back out. Her signature side scheme is Generation Y. It joins the party with only 2 threat, but it has the hazard icon, so you'll be drawing an extra encounter card while this is out. And when revealed, discard a card from the top of your deck for each Persona card you have in play. All things considered, it's not that bad, only 2 threat, and hopefully you can use Amir to put those cards back into the bottom of your deck if they were good. Her nemesis is Thomas Edison. He's got Bird and Genius traits. Attacks for 1, schemes for 3. He has 3 hit points, and he can't take any damage if you're engaged with another minion. The henchman of the first bad guy she went up against and defeated pretty easily is her signature nemesis? That was weird. He's more annoying than anything else. You probably don't want to dip down into alter ego while he's out because 3 scheme is pretty rough on a minion. That's pretty rough. Then we've got Edison's Giant Robot. This sucker comes in with 8 health, does 2 attack and only 1 scheme, but you can't damage it. Pay 1 mental resource to ignore the text box on it. So ignoring the text box means ignoring the part where you can't damage it. That's pretty good, but still 8 damage. Ugh. And remember, if this comes out while Thomas Edison is out, you can't hurt Thomas Edison until you've taken care of this thing. Last is Harvest, of which there are 2. It's a treachery. Exhaust each persona in play. For each persona that exhausted, heal the villain by 1. If no personas exhaust, it gains Surge. A potential heal of 3 for the villain, and if this comes out while you're in Alter Ego or you were planning on being in Alter Ego, exhausting all those supports can really mess up your plans. Moving on to her aspect cards, Ms. Marvel's pre-constructed deck used the protection aspect. First, we have Nova in the style of Sam Alexander, a 4-cost ally with 3 health who does 2 attack and 1 thwart, and when an enemy initiates an attack against you, you can spend an energy resource to deal 2 damage to that enemy. So here we are with that 1 resource for 2 damage again, and it can be very, very useful. It can be very useful. You're probably not going to use it every time, but it can really bail you out of some tricky situations with minions. Next, we have 3 copies of Get Behind Me, a 1-cost event. As a hero interrupt, when a treachery is revealed, you may play this to cancel the when revealed. Then the villain attacks you. It's probably going to have to be a pretty bad treachery for this to be worth it unless you have just a killer defense, which Ms. Marvel doesn't, but it might be worth that extra hit, especially with 5 recovery, if it means not taking a Shadow of the Past or an ill-timed advance. Then we have 3 copies of Preemptive Strike, another 1-cost event. As a hero interrupt, when the villain attacks, cancel the boost icons on the boost card, then deal damage to the villain for each boost icon ignored. I like this one a lot. Flipping a boost card and seeing 3 boost icons is such a drag, but having this to turn that around to be a hit of 3 instead of getting hit by 3 is fantastic. It is worth noting though that it is a defensive event, not an attack event, so Embiggen can't be used to boost this. Then we've got 3 copies of a 3-cost event, Tackle. As an action, stun an enemy. If you paid with a physical resource, it also deals 3 damage. So it stuns no matter what, but if you're able to pay using a physical resource or say the wild resource off the biokinetic polymer suit, it's also going to do 3 damage. Unless you say exhaust Embiggen, then it's going to do 5 damage. If you got a Helicarrier out, you've got Nakia out, you can get this thing out just using your biokinetic polymer suit, and it's going to do 5 damage and stun the enemy. What? Next up is 3 copies of a protection staple, Energy Barrier. It's an upgrade with the item and tech traits. It costs 2 for 3 reflection counters. When you would take any amount of damage, remove 1 reflection counter to cancel 1 damage, then do a damage to an enemy. Yeah, it's only going to block 1 damage, but then being able to do that back is pretty nice, especially if you're able to use that to knock off a tough status. That's very satisfying. I like this card. Lockjaw is our first basic card. He's a 4-cost ally who does 2 thwart and 2 attack, each at 2 consequential damage. He's got 4 hit points and the Inhuman trait, and he's also a very, very good boy. You may play Lockjaw from your discard pile, paying his cost. So nothing that discounts allies is going to work on Lockjaw if you're playing him from your discard pile. You have to pay his full 4 cost in order to get him out from the discard pile. Honestly, I've never really been wild about Lockjaw. The 2 consequential damage on both of his activations means that you're only going to get 2 activations out of him unless you're able to heal him. In Hulk, though, it's not bad to be able to play something from your discard pile. You will occasionally have those turns where your hand is nothing but resources and nothing you can really play. This helps with that a lot. Then we get 3 copies of Endurance, a basic upgrade that costs 1, has the condition trait, and you can only have 1 in play. You get plus 3 hit points. Nice and simple and amazing. If you play solo, you know how difficult it can be to dip down to alter egos safely. This allows you to stay in hero form longer, and anything that does that is gonna get an okay by me. 3 copies of Enhanced Reflexes is next. This is a 2-cost condition upgrade that gets 3 energy counters. As a hero, you can exhaust this and remove a counter to generate an energy resource. I don't typically use this card or its siblings, but as we're seeing the rise in requirements for certain cards, you have to use a specific resource in order to play a card. These cards are getting more useful, much more useful than they used to be. We've got an aggression card next, 3-cost melee. As a hero attack action, deal 3 damage to an enemy, then deal 3 damage to another enemy. Couple of things to note here. If there is no minion on the field, you do not get that secondary attack. You can't attack something and then attack that same thing. It has to be a second target on that second attack. The other thing to note is Ms. Marvel's Embiggen will boost both of these attacks, so instead of being 3 resources for 3 damage and then 3 damage, it's 3 resources for 5 damage and 5 damage, 3 for 10. Concussive Blow is next. It's a 3-cost Justice event which confuses one enemy, but if you paid using a physical resource, you'll also deal 3 damage to that enemy. Or again, 5 with Ms. Marvel and Embiggen. This has all of the same things as Tackle. You can use Nakia and a Helicarrier plus the Biokinetic Polymer Suit to put this out for 1 and do 5 damage and confuse. Confusing is generally not as useful as a stun, but it's sure not useful, especially in Ms. Marvel, who wants to be an alter ego very often. Morale Boost is our leadership card. It's an event that comes in at only 1 cost to boost any hero's basic stats for 1 round. You know, those things you don't really use Ms. Marvel for. It's a fine card for heroes who are able to ready multiple times and take advantage of having a boosted basic thwart or basic attack multiple times in a round. You know, like not Ms. Marvel. Why is this in this pack? Another great card that is inexplicably in a hero pack that doesn't really need it is Downtime, a 1-cost basic condition upgrade that you may only have 1 of in play. Your alter ego gains +2 to their recovery. This is a really good card, it's just maybe a bit overkill in Ms. Marvel, who already has a recovery of 5. This gets it up to 7, which I guess would let you run her until she's almost dead and then still flip down to heal up. It just seems like you could probably fit better cards in your deck than this for her, but it's great. So Ms. Marvel is definitely a character that wants to spend a significant amount of time in alter ego. If you have a board state that can afford it, you might even want to go down almost every other turn. That can just get kind of stressful in certain scenarios when that threat level is not very high. But when you have those 3 supports out and they're kicking off every other turn and you're just coming back into hero form with 8 or 9 or 10 cards in hand, you can do anything. Amir can set up some insane combos. If you use him right, you know you're putting those cards at the bottom of the deck, so when you get to the turn where you deplete your deck, you can have a monster round. Nakia's discount is amazing. Bruno holding things for you like a poor, unrequited love boy is sad, but very, very useful. This was a little bit of an odd duck pack when it came out. We had this big Avengers push, but then this one champion who just had no other cards that really interacted with champion until very, very recently. She's an incredible aggression hero. She's really good in justice and protection, and everybody's good in leadership, but she's an incredible aggression hero now. Ms. Marvel with Embiggen and Melee, if she uses Honed Technique, which is a new card from the Nova pack, will give her 16 damage on 3 resources, 8 damage to 2 different targets. That's filthy. That's just filthy. Alright, well that's all I've got from Ms. Marvel. Be sure to like and subscribe and share, I guess. I don't know. Get off my lawn. The Grouchy Nerd.